Croeso, hello, welcome back to RobRyanRed, the Wrexham podcast brought to you in association with Red 10 People Development. On today's podcast, we'll take a look back at Wrexham's dramatic win over Peterborough, bring you all the latest transfer news and look ahead to back-to-back Thursday night matches under the lights. All that and more on today's show.
RobRyanRed.
So, Nath, I think we need to start this week's podcast with an apology. Not sure how long ago it was, but we both said Steven Fletcher was finished, and if it wasn't for him, our promotion hopes might be finished by now. He is just scoring goals for fun. It almost feels inevitable, doesn't it? Every time he comes off the bench that he's going to make something happen. Last weekend was the epitome of that. It was a dire, dull, depressing game of football. And then Fletcher again. Ole, ole, ole.
When you said we need to make an apology, my first thought was this could be about anything that we've said. We've said a lot of things, so this could have been about a lot of things. But there you go. I'm quite happy to eat humble pie about Steven Fletcher. I thought his days of being useful and able to produce big moments, even though we knew that 15-20 minute role suited him, I did think that this might have caught up with him this season. But you have to say that he is single-handedly keeping this pretty anemic attack afloat. He is coming up with, what is it now, 13 goals for Wrexham, I think it is, 12 of which have come at the racecourse, and of those 13, I think it's 6 have come in the last 10 minutes of games, and I probably about 5 of those are after the 88th minute or whatever. He's so good at getting late winners, clutch moments. Steven Fletcher has kind of carved out for him. That's the role that he's got. Super sub Steven, as he probably should be anointed. But yeah, poor game. But he's such a good header of the ball. I know there are other goals where the one that Rathbone cuts back to him and he finishes that one, and you think of Wickham. He gets that third goal when we win 3-2. There are other moments. I mean, he wins the penalty, scores the penalty through the fog against Blackpool. I know Blackpool fans are still moaning about that on social media, but you have to say that when the season gets to its end and we've got, another 21 games to go, I think, you're going to look back and say those 8 to 12 points or whatever that Steven Fletcher won you are huge, because it's not going to be a massive gap between that top 4. You're seeing Birmingham, you're seeing Wrexham, you're seeing Wickham, you're seeing Huddersfield. It's not going to be loads that separates those 4. They're pulling away now. And when you've got a trump card like Steven Fletcher in your corner, you're always going to have a chance, and so it proved.
Well, yeah, I'm just looking now. If you look back at just those last 3 home matches, all of them could have been draws. So that would have been 3 points instead of 9. That's an extra 6 points he's single-handedly saved us. And if we didn't have those 6 points, we'd be 4th in the table, and we'd be out of the sort of automatic promotion picture by now. Like we theoretically that could have been season done genuinely over the last 3 home games if we hadn't have won all 3 of them, but we did. And there is that real difficult decision now that when you've got someone who's so good off the bench, there's this temptation to say play from the start. But I think Fletcher knows himself, and he'd love to be able to play an hour every single week. He'd love to, but his body can't do that. And the reason why he's so good is because he's got 20 minutes just to give it his all, and he can manage the game really well. He's fresh. He's confident. He would back himself to finish any chance that comes his way. We even saw it at Barnsley, didn't we? Where he has that chance right at the end, and Mullin's screaming for the ball in the box, and Fletcher has a shot. It goes well over the bar. But some people say that's desperation, but in my eyes, that's confidence from Fletcher that he was like, well, it's 2-1 down, last minute of the game. I'm probably going to score this. And I know it doesn't turn out that way, but those are the moments that even in failure, you can just see that this is a guy who's got so much about him at the moment. His head's been held so high. And again, him and McLean, I think when we signed them both, people were like, look at the age of these two. Why are we signing these? We need people for the long-term project. And that is something we've spoken about as well, that we need people for the long term. But you can make exceptions for proper athletes like them who set the standards. And I'd love it if in the next series of Welcome to Wrexham we found this out, sort of those training ground stats, who's running the furthest, who's the fastest. Because I bet it's McLean and Fletcher every single week. They are setting the standards, keeping them so high. And
Rich,
it's crazy.
I would say that Fletcher, when he came in at half time, wasn't it, away to Barnsley, changed the game. Second half, we dominated that game and we just gave ourselves too much of a mountain to climb. They're a decent team, albeit they were kind of second best, I thought for large spells, particularly the second half when Fletcher was on. We looked like we had a different energy about us. Unlucky maybe not to end up getting a point there, but you look at it and we were fortunate to get a win over Wigan, a win over Blackpool. These things sort of have a funny way of evening themselves out. It's funny you say about McLean and Fletcher probably being the top of all the statistical charts in training. I bet you Fletcher isn't. And the reason why, because he's so clever that he doesn't need to go hair-raising around the pitch. He knows exactly. I think it's easy to forget just how high a level Steven Fletcher's played at. Like a really experienced international that played for Marseille. Forget.
I think I saw a tweet from, maybe it's from Mundial or someone, that they shared a picture of Steven Fletcher playing in the French Cup final against PSG for Marseille. And it's like, geez, this guy was a multi-million-pound striker. And it's anecdotal, and I can't remember the exact stat, but I vividly remember as a kid watching Match of the Day. It might have been 2012, 2013 sort of season, but there was some crazy stat where like Steven Fletcher was the top scorer in the Premier League after 5 or 10 matches or something. And he'd scored 6 goals, but only had 7 shots that season.
Rich, when you think of Steven Fletcher, though, who's the first team that comes to mind? Because I was chatting to a friend of mine. I was going to say, for me, it was Sunderland, but a friend of mine is a big Wolves fan, and he was saying how great he was at Wolves. But for me, I can just see him in the red and white of Sunderland. And I think it's so easy to forget that he is a level above, just in terms of football IQ, a level above anyone else in that striker room. And we're talking about Mullin's a very good footballer, Palmer's a good player, but there are levels to the game. And Steven Fletcher's been right to the top, like you said, played against Paris Saint-Germain in a cup final, played for Marseille, and we're asking like, before he scored these goals, is he really going to do it against Bristol Rovers at the Memorial? Yeah. Or Blackpool, yeah, he is actually, and he's doing it consistently now. And I know what you're saying about there's that temptation, like maybe start him. I think the reason it's going so well is because it's clicked for everybody. That Ollie Palmer does the wear and tear, sort of grind him down a bit, and Fletcher only needs that split second, that little drop off, that 1-2% drop off, and you'll get a chance. And I actually don't think anyone in that attacking department can head the ball as well as him. And when you've got deliveries like Barnett, like McLean, like Rathbone, as we saw against Peterborough, I mean, he must be licking his lips, Steven Fletcher, when he can meet headers like that.
I think the other factor of it as well is that the Wrexham players now know as well. Look, if we're in the game the last 15, 20 minutes and we've still got Fletcher to come on, we've got a bloody good chance of winning this. And it is just that sort of snowball effect. It's just going to grow every single week. And right now, almost any game coming up, if we're losing or we need a goal in the last 15, 20 minutes and Fletcher comes on, you're going to fancy him. And it's really interesting. And this will bring us on to the sort of striker debate that today's show will be a lot about, because when I see all these names we're linked with as well for this window, I really do think we'll spend big. And again, I do think we called that last summer that we want to buy a striker in January. I see, for example, someone like Patrick Bamford, and I spoke to Matt from the Manchester Reds at my square on Saturday, and we were both talking, saying like, some fans, they're not keen on Bamford. I know he's just an example, but again, if we attract someone who has played in the Premier League and scored goals in the Premier League this month, that is a level above anything else we've got in the team, because we look at the Wrexham squad, and a lot of them have played at really good levels. And obviously Owen O'Connell's played for Celtic, he's had Champions League experience, and there's little stories like that. But a lot of our squad haven't played at the top level,
right?
And they might be very good football league players, but we, for aspirations we've got, we now need people who've got that Premier League experience, people who've been successful Championship promotion sides, people who've just scored goals in the Prem, or just been, some of the best players in the country and in their respective roles. So I think that's very important to look at. We always say that we need people who can go up the leagues with us, But with McLean and Fletcher both getting older as well, I think it's vital that we always have someone who's an older, wise head in the squad who has been there and done it before. They don't have to be the main star man at the moment, but I just think that experience is so priceless. And I'd love to hear as well, off the current crop of strikers, just how much they've learned off Steven Fletcher. I'm pretty sure there was quotes from Palmer, either was it like this season or last season, saying like he just completely. I know people be like, well, obviously didn't really work, but Palmer was saying how much of a more of a goal threat he'd become because Fletcher was telling him about positioning, saying get here, get there, and that's part of the reason I think why Palmer has adapted to the sort of football league life a lot better than we thought. I didn't think Ollie Palmer would be good enough for League Two. He's been decent enough for League Two and League One. I think a lot of that is down to Steven Fletcher.
Yeah, I think it was the Reading game where where Palmer scored, I think 3-0, and he ends up running over to Fletcher. That's my memory, I think. And they've been talking about going for coffee together and just offering little tweaks because Fletcher's at a point in his career now where he knows the end is near, and he will be looking at what does he want to do? Does he want to get into coaching? Does he want to, go into media work? What does he want to do? Does he want to offer one-to-one coaching? And obviously you see quite a few ex-players now go into that sort of side of things. So I'm sure it was rewarding for Fletcher when he has been on the sidelines, particularly at the start of the season, to see little bits they've been working on in training pay off for teammates, because he's at a point now where it's not about ego. He just wants to be part of something and to play a key role. And it'd be really interesting because I think if we were 10th now at this point in the season, I would say play Mo Faal all the time and let's just build experience up that way. What are we going to gain from playing Fletcher and McLean when this season's going nowhere? We're not going to go down. We're not going to go up. And so let's look to the future. But now you have such an opportunity. And we sort of flirted with the idea at the beginning of the season, didn't we, Rich, that maybe we get in the playoffs? But I think now you'd have to say, and knock on wood here in front of me, but it seems very, very unlikely that Wrexham will drop out the playoffs entirely. That the top four are starting to pull away, and there will be games like Blackpool, like Wigan, like Peterborough, where it's going to come down to one, maybe two moments, and often experience wins in those scenarios, and you've seen it, Fletcher, on all three occasions.
Exactly. I think that's an interesting point as well. Now that it's getting to the stage where I laid out my expectations right from the start. I thought 10th, 11th, and I would have been happy with that. I'd still be very happy with just playoffs, but it's getting to the point now where it's like, to me, Birmingham win it, and it's us or Wickham or Huddersfield, obviously, for second. And that experience that we've got, I know Wickham have that sort of, they've got similar to us, they've just got that culture and that squad, and they've got that sort of money can't buy little bit of magic. Huddersfield have experience as well. And it's going to be really interesting to see how it plans out in these next few weeks. And I was also going to say on Fletcher, this makes it so. This is the reward he deserves, because I think he admitted that before he joined Wrexham, he was contemplating retirement anyway. And now look, we're almost 2 years on from that. And all those injury setbacks and all those times stupid podcasters like us have written him off. For him to now be back scoring goals and have that self-fulfillment and that self-gratitude, and to know this is why it's worth it. It must be so difficult, particularly at his age, at that stage of his career, to have any niggle, to have any setback, any injury. Because what's the point? How would you pick yourself up again? But he did, and he could easily, have just said, that's it. But he had that fight to get back on the pitch, and now he's getting us the goals. And yeah, we are so grateful. So it's been a very long apology. It's been about 15 minutes long, but Steven Fletcher, we are so, so sorry.
Right, from one ex-Dundee United striker to a current one, albeit on loan, Sam Dalby. Now, we got this email fairly recently, Rich, from Rob Taylor that said, if it was announced that we are signing the top scorer in the Scottish Premiership tomorrow, I think we would all be pleased with that. Well, we already have him in Sam Dalby. We already own him. Bring him back and let him continue scoring here. He went on loan to get game time and improve. That has happened, so job well done. We didn't let him go out to get rid of him. I predict a return, and soon. Phil Parkinson keeping his cards very close to his chest. He did want to get through the Port Vale game, which didn't end up happening. We'll get onto when that's been rearranged to a bit later on. That didn't end up happening. So now it's decision time. There's lots of meetings going on. What are we doing in terms of Dalby? What are we doing in terms of signings, new signings? Do we need a midfielder? Do we want to go and get more strikers? Huddersfield are also in the market for strikers. We're in competition with them pretty much, and we're both going for the top two. I actually think it'll be between those two teams, and depending on who maybe has the better recruitment, that will sway it for me. In who will get that second spot. I think Wickham being a little bit decimated. But anyway, let's not get sidetracked on Wickham losing all their lone stars. Sam Dalby, Rich, because we've got a chat with the Dundee United podcast, the Dode Fox podcast. Before we get to them, two-part question. One, how surprised have you been that going into the new year, he is still the top scorer ahead of anybody that is at the Old Firm teams? And two, how would you play it in this window if you had the control in this situation?
So this is again something I spoke to with Matt extensively from the Manchester Reds outside the My Squin on Saturday. He's getting a lot of shouts this week. I understand that put in black and white, top scorer in the Scottish Premier League. Wow, sign him up. It was the same. I know different players, but Lawrence Shankland last season, he was so in demand. Stayed at Hearts. I think he's got 3 goals this season. Dolby's got 10. But the two caveats to this: one, Dolby's playing at a team where he's the main man. So if he comes back to Wrexham, he has to be the main man again. There is, from my point of view, you're only going to get the Sam Dalby we see now at Dundee United if Parky says to him, look, I want it to be you and Mullin till the end of the season. Fletcher's the guy who comes on for you, but you're starting every single week. We know for a fact Parky adores Sam Dalby, but thought he lacked confidence. That's why he didn't sort of succeed in League Two. And if Sam Dalby comes back and he's promised, look, you're playing 90 minutes every single match, other than maybe 15, 20 some weeks where we'll bring Fletcher on. But if you're fit and you want to play, you are playing. Like that is part of the reason why Dalby's so good now. If you bring Dalby back and give him the Fletcher role of 20 minutes off the bench, you kill his confidence immediately. You kill his rhythm. You're not getting the same player. So I think that's a very important point to make out. I'd also say Sam Dalby, I think he's averaging a goal every 141 minutes in the Scottish Premier League. Honestly, so I just don't know if that's good enough for League One level. It's always that deep question of how good is Scottish Premier League compared to the English sort of hierarchy. We know Celtic and Rangers would be higher end Championship to lower end Premier League, but they'd also have more money. So it's a very quirky, weird one to sort of work out. And then the rest of the teams. When we signed Scott Bowden from Inverness Caledonian Thistle, who were Scottish Premier League at the time, and Wrexham were just a bang average National League team, I interviewed Scott Bowden the day he signed for Wrexham. And I said to him, why did you leave Inverness to come to Wrexham? And he said, mate, I know this is like 10 years ago, so things can change, but he said, take the Old Firm out of it, it's the exact same level. National League is the same as the Scottish Premier League. The worst teams in the Scottish Prem are like National League, League Two level. That's what he said. He'd only scored 3 goals at Inverness that season, so I'm not sure how much of it was true or not. And then the other fact,
not exactly a glowing endorsement of his credentials, you know what I mean?
No,
Coming in with 3 goals.
But and then the other aspect I'd say is the man we love, Louis Moult, who at Motherwell was the best striker outside of the Old Firm. Very similar to sort of what Dalby's doing now. Went to Preston, didn't work out, and has slowly dropped and dropped and dropped. And even that Louis Moult, he was a good National League striker. He wasn't the best striker in National League that season. I know he played out of position at times for Wrexham, and it's, again, difficult to gauge. But I'm just not buying it, to be honest, mate. And to get onto part 2 of the question, I think I said it the other week, I'd recall him and sell him because football's a cruel, horrible business, and we need to cash in on him now.
But it's worth bearing in mind that he's already played for Wrexham this season, and of course he's played for Dundee United. So the only teams he can play for between now and the end of the season are those 2 teams. He cannot be if he's sold to a different club, he cannot play for 6 months. So you are only selling. If I'm trying to sell, Rich, I can't drive up a bidding war. If, for example, look at Nathan Lowe, top scorer in League Two. He's on loan at Walsall from Stoke. He hasn't played for Stoke. They could easily recall him. Heck, they could, I'm sure Wrexham would be looking at that. I'm sure Stockport would be looking at that. Maybe you try and get him into League One, or you try and start a bidding war. You've got one of the most informed strikers in the EFL, and he can go and play for somebody else. Dalby cannot do that. And so we're looking at going, right, Dundee United, how much do you want to keep him? Because they are in a battle with Aberdeen to finish third behind the Old Firm, getting into Europe. Can they afford it? What could they afford? 200 grand, 150,000, or do they just go, you know what? He's a free agent in the summer. We're going to play the good guy here, and if you recall him and play the bad guy, and and we don't bid for him, then what? We're just stuck with. I think when we loaned him out at the beginning of the season, the more I've thought about it this week, Rich, not extended his contract, which nobody was mad about at the time because he was on an expiring deal, and I think for the most part, most people would cut their losses on him. And I was quite keen at the start of the season to say how great he was going to be for us, and it didn't materialise. He ended up leaving on loan, but I was not exactly banging the door down to say should have given him a new contract. And hindsight's 2020. But you look now and gone, if he'd have extended his contract, we'd be in a much more formidable position. I'm starting to wonder whether Wrexham know that Dundee United don't have the cash, and they just allow Dalby to flourish as a gesture of goodwill, if nothing else.
I guess I think, yeah, it's a difficult one because one, we don't need the money, but we're still a business. We still got to protect our interest in our assets. I think Dundee would bid for him. I think even if you just get some money for him, that's enough. But what if the elephant in the room is he stays at Dundee but signs a new Wrexham deal?
Dundee, yeah. Well, tell you, let's get the Dundee United perspective. Earlier this week, I spoke to Paul from the Dode Fox podcast. And while they've got a soft spot for Wrexham, they're very keen for Parky to, in their mind, do the right thing and let Sam Dalby stay up in Dundee at Tannadice. So here is what Paul had to tell me about the Sam Dalby evolution. Right then, one of the hot topics, or probably the hot topic in January, which I never would have seen coming when he left in the summer, was what do we do about Sam Dalby, who is the top scorer in Scotland? I don't want to say all this with too much surprise in my voice, but it didn't look likely, let's say. None of us expected that. So I thought I would enlist the help of Paul from the Dode Fox podcast that covers all things Dundee United, where, Paul, Sam Dalby's been an absolute revelation.
He certainly has, yeah. He's more than welcome to kick back and stay up north for another 6 months if he so wishes. Yeah, similar to you, like when Sam was brought in, at that time, the Dundee United manager Jim Goodwin had come out and kind of made statements saying, look, we're looking for somebody with a little bit of pace up front. And then Sam Dalby came in, and I'd heard the name, but I didn't know much about him. But you know what it's like when fans get wind of a sniff of a name who's coming in, straight online to find out a wee bit about them. And instantly it was, well, this guy's not got the pace that we were hoping that we were going to be bringing in. So I'm not saying people were dead against him. I don't think that's the case. But you were kind of thinking, oh, this is not what we thought we were going to be getting here. So expectations were kind of tempered straight away. But he has blown all that out of the water.
I mean, 10 goals. And look, people, I think, having lived and worked up in Scotland and had great fun covering all levels of the pyramid in Scotland, people who don't watch it regularly will sort of play down the level that which Sam Dalby is playing at now. But he's outscoring anyone that plays for Celtic or Rangers, who we've seen play in Europe and play at a very high level. Talk me through, I mean, he's scored 10 goals. That's the most in the top flight in Scotland right now. What are his goals like? Are they all kind of penalty box finishes? I mean, what is it, has he taken his game to a different level? We're just confused how he's become this marksman, really.
Well, again, as I said, I was aware of the name. I wasn't really aware of his game before he came up here, so I can't say if he's taken it to the next level or whatever. But from what I can understand, he's clearly playing in a system that suits his strengths. Most, if not all, of his goals have come probably within the 6-yard box area, or certainly centrally in the box. And he's fond of a header as well, as you could imagine, because he's about 6'3". So I think ultimately we're just playing to his strengths, and we're reaping the rewards for that.
He's played for Wrexham already, and he's played for Dundee United, which significantly limits the options. I think if you're Dundee United, that does strengthen your hand because he can't go and play for another team. Had he not played for Wrexham, maybe things would be a little bit more precarious this month. But it is either Wrexham that he will play for the remainder of the season, or Dundee United. Are you and the fan base worried about your season if he was to be recalled? If we start there.
I think it would be, yeah, because as you mentioned, he's the top scorer in the league. He's obviously our top scorer. He's basically the focal point of our attack. So if you were to take the focal point of anybody's attack out of the team, they're going to suffer. So yeah, we're keeping everything crossed that he remains up in Dundee for the rest of the season, because it doesn't bear thinking about if he's not here, I suppose.
Well, look, it's if he does end up coming back, which we're not sure. I mean, Phil Parkinson spoke today. We're talking on Monday that, as we said before he comes on, I think Phil knows exactly what's going to happen with Sam Dalby, but he's keeping it quite coy, keeping cards close to his chest. There's various scenarios. He stays there. He's on a season-long loan. He stays at Dundee United. He's just scored the winner in the Dundee derby and looked like great celebrations in Bedlam that for him, and we were all really chuffed and rooting for him. I think people could see that online. A lot of Wrexham fans are desperate for him to do well, but there is that feeling among some in the Wrexham fan base that you've got to try and test Dundee United's resolve a little bit and see how much they want to keep him, because if you look at it from a business point of view, Wrexham have got the top scorer in Scotland on their books for another few months till the end of the season. And will Dundee United risk? You're in that battle with Aberdeen, it seems like. Maybe Motherwell's slightly off it, but battle to finish third. You can't really afford, and how much is Sam Dalby worth? It's that kind of conundrum, isn't it, Paul?
100%. And there's not a lot of money up in the Scottish game, out with maybe Celtic and the Rangers. I suppose Aberdeen and Hearts, they kind of spend a little bit of dosh as well. But when it comes to Dundee United, I think it would be really pushing the boat out for us to even offer a transfer fee for anybody. So I think it might just be a case of United have basically came out and said, we want to keep him. And I think from Sam's point of view, he's came out, and whether or not it's lip service, but he said, look, I'm happy here. I would like to stay. And it's understandable. Why wouldn't he? Because he's I'm not saying he's in the form of his lifetime, but he's in great form. Everything's going well for him. Everything he touches just now goes in the net. The fans all love him. He must be feeling really, really good about himself. But whether or not both sides can meet and agree, okay, we can afford to pay you whatever wage that you think you deserve, and whether or not Wrexham do force our hand and say, look, we're needing some dosh for this guy up front, or you're running the risk of completely losing him in the summer, it will be one to watch. But I think certainly from United's point of view, we are desperate to keep him.
Yeah, I saw his interview after scoring the winner in the derby. Very non-committal. I mean,
yes.
He may not know. He may not know how much say does he get in these things. Jim Goodwin, as you say, desperate to keep him, but again, he probably knows. I've seen some people online as well saying, well, he can just sign a pre-contract agreement. I think you and I both know that if he lets it run until the summer, he'll have quite a few options if he finishes top scorer in Scotland, and so it's a very
even if he doesn't
right.
finish top scorer, like he's proven so far after 20 odd games, and he didn't come in right at the start, so less than 20 games that he can clearly make a good contribution to a team up in Scotland. I mean, I'm loath to say it, but Aberdeen are probably a team that can give him a lot more money than United. Hearts, I'm not saying, I don't think he'd go to Celtic. They're maybe just a step a wee bit above, but the Rangers possibly, that couldn't be ruled out, because other teams in the Scottish League certainly, and in the leagues down in England, they can't help but have noticed what he has achieved so far this season.
Yes, whether he fancies up sticks from Dundee to go to live in Glasgow or wherever else, in having travelled around Scotland, I'm sure he won't be short on options. What do you think then? I mean, this could change by the day. By the time this is out on Thursday, who knows? We might have a clear idea. But I mean, I think they might try and force the hand. I really do. I think they might call him back and say, what is it, a couple of 100,000, but what do you think will be the way this plays out?
I hope that Phil Parkinson is set in his mind that Sam Dalby is surplus to requirements, which I think was possibly in his mind at the start of the season, and that's why he would sanction such a move anyway. And if that is the case, then we will happily keep him. And then you take if that's the case, if he stays in Dundee just now, then we take our chances in the summer when he is out of contract. Wrexham, I can totally see your point, though. Why would they not test the water? Because there is potentially money to be made here, or they lose him for nothing in the summer. In fact, I read somewhere as well, and I'm not sure, you'd know a lot better than me, do Wrexham have an option on him as well for a further 12 months?
Not that I'm aware of. It is the final few months. Then
right,
he is
okay.
free as a bird. And I do wonder as well. I think, Phil Parkinson, rightly so, has had a lot of praise for his man management in difficult situations. People who've lost children or partners have been really ill, and various things that have happened off the pitch. And none of them have involved Sam Dalby, thankfully. But he's been very good with that. And I do wonder if, as you say, he's surplus to requirements. Wrexham are trying to sign a striker or two ready for a championship bid, hopefully, this month. That whether he just goes, in fairness to Sam, he's earned the chance to be the main guy somewhere. And I don't want to squabble over 200,000 or 250,000. If you know what I mean. I think whether he just goes, you know what, we don't want him or need him, and so why should we sort of bring him in the middle of this to do? You know what I mean?
I hope that you are advising Mr. Parkinson and whoever else is making the decisions down at the racecourse, because that would be fantastic for us. As I said, and I'm not really joking about it as such, but I don't think that Dundee United could afford to pay much of a transfer fee. Like when you say a couple of $100,000, that's maybe not a lot of money, but for Dundee United, I'd be amazed if we were paying a couple of $100,000 for anybody just now, because we're trying to tighten our belts. We lost a lot of money because we got relegated. We just came back up this season. And let's be honest, we've struck it lucky by managing to lure Sam Dalby up the road for hopefully a season, at least.
Well, let's just quickly then, before we finish, talk about another Dundee United player in Steven Fletcher, who is coming up big for us. If Sam Dalby, technically Wrexham Sam Dalby is coming up big for you, and ex-Dundee United Steven Fletcher is coming up big for us. What are your memories of having Steven Fletcher up there in Dundee?
So Fletcher came into Tannadice. It turned out to be a bad year because the team got relegated. But when he came in, I can remember thinking, like, this guy's a bit old. Why are we signing this guy? But you quickly realise once you saw him play that he is still technically very, very gifted. He is contributing massively. He's brilliant in the air. He's brilliant on the ground. He doesn't have great pace, but I don't think he ever had great pace. But he knocked his pan in, for wanting of a better word. Like, he gave you his all every time he was on the park. And we were very, very reliant on him that season. So the fact that the team got relegated, it wasn't any mark on his character or his contribution to the team, because he gave everything that he could and more. It was just that the rest of the rest of the thing was a disaster that year. Unfortunately, that's what happens now and again in sport. But Fletcher was really, really good for United. And I think, and I don't think I'm wrong in saying this, but when he left, I'm pretty sure he was on a 2-year deal, but he agreed to rip his contract up with Dundee United, which saved us a lot of money, because I think Fletcher, I don't know exactly what he was on, but he was on quite a decent wage at Tannadice. And the fact that we had dropped into the Championship in Scotland, we just simply could not have afforded to keep paying somebody that wage. And at that age, there was absolutely no chance anybody was going to then buy him from you. So he was good enough to rip up the contract. And I think when he ripped the contract up, he said, look, I want to move closer to home. And then lo and behold, he rocks up in Wales. I'm not sure how much closer Wales is to Glasgow than it is Dundee, but there you go. Money talks.
I mean, look, an incredible. I think he's just an incredibly nice bloke.
Yes.
At the very heart of it, who does seem to care and does come up with big goals. And we were saying before you come on, I mean, quite easy to forget. And we've said in this podcast how we basically owe Steven Fletcher an apology, because myself and Rich said that we thought he was done for the season, that he couldn't contribute as we needed him to. We're talking about an ex-Scotland international that's played in France at the top level for Marseille.
Played at the highest level, yeah.
I think you're right that it's just a funny old one where we're talking about two different strikers. Sam Dalby's on the upward trajectory, and hopefully for everybody involved is getting better and better. Steven Fletcher, all right, he's on the downturn, but we're starting from such a high point that
Yes,
even his downturn is far better than
most,
so many other players, right?
Yeah, 100%. No, he's definitely the technique and everything that he's always had. That's not deserted him yet. There's maybe a little bit of quickness and little parts of his game that he can no longer do that he used to. But in general, like, he's more than doing a job for you guys. And I know that it's in small pieces. He's only coming on maybe the last 25, 20, 15 minutes here and there, but he's contributing, and that's basically all that you can ask for when he's coming on.
For sure. Well, last question then, because I'm very intrigued by your season. Obviously, we're all following Dalby's progress, and if he stays there, we'll be keeping an eye to the very end of the season. Mm-hmm. Do you think you'll pip Aberdeen to third? Because, finishing best of the rest outside the old firm is a huge achievement, and I know from being up there.
Yeah, it really is, because it's very hard to split them. But it's quite negative when you think about it that way. You start a season, in most teams and most leagues, you start the season with hopes and dreams that you never know what will happen. You kind of do know what's going to happen in the Scottish League. It's going to be one of the two big teams from Glasgow that will win it. With Dundee United coming up this season, we kind of, as fans, you probably wanted to aim to be top six. So where we're sitting just now, and it could all change because we've got Celtic away on Wednesday. That's one that you watch behind the couch. It could all change. But if we finish top six, that would be where a lot of people would be relatively happy. To pip Aberdeen, that would be great, because there's a big bit of a rivalry there as well. Not so much as it is against Dundee, but that's because they're from our own city. But to beat Aberdeen would be great, because they've splashed a lot of money. They've been well backed, far better backed than Dundee United anyway. It's been quite an assembly of a team that they've put together. So, yeah, they were flying at the start of the season. You probably noticed that. They were unbeaten for a long period of time until they faced Celtic, and Celtic absolutely battered them in a cup semi-final, and they've never been the same since. So hopefully that continues and they end up in the bottom six. That would be tremendous and quite funny from my point of view. But do I think we can pip them in the league? I hope so, but we'll wait and see.
So, Rich, understandably, they are eager for him to stay, but they are also quite aware. I mean, Paul was saying that, look, to you guys, maybe 200,000 is nothing. To us, that's a lot of money. We have really had to cut back big time. And look, yes, Dalby could sign a pre-contract agreement to stay at Tannadice, to stay with Dundee United now. But if he finishes as top scorer come the end of the season, he's going to have offers aplenty in probably the EFL and, maybe a Rangers look at him, somebody like that. I don't know. I think if you're Sam Dalby, yes, you don't have control of whether you get recalled, but the future's looking very bright if you can find a way to stay there until the end of the season.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you make a good point there. This isn't me trying to be dismissive. I don't want to throw shade at Dundee United, but if Sam Dalby continues his scoring streak, he's going to outgrow them by the end of the campaign. So from his point of view, he's probably not too worried, because he knows he'll get good offers in the summer, whatever the outcome is. And yes, Dundee might seem like the most appealing option now, but like I said, would not surprise me in the slightest if someone like Rangers went for him, or if he got Championship, League One interest from another club. Would not surprise me, and they'll take the gamble on him. I just think that his kind of race is ran at Wrexham. And interesting as well, you mentioned the transfer fee not being that big for us. I think if we sold him for 200k, he'd be sort of maybe 10th or 9th in our record ever sales. Do you know what I mean? Wrexham, we've always had to kind of be a selling club just by the nature of not having much money, but there's not been many massive sort of transfer sales in our lifetime. So, yeah, I think it's one of those where we still need to get money in, and it can't be sniffed at. Even in our financial situation, just getting some money in from him, I think, would be beneficial. But let us know what you think. What should happen with Sam Dalby? Let us know if you're watching on YouTube. As always, RobRyanRed, and you can get in contact with us, RobRyanRed.com or RobRyanRed@gmail.com. Dave, if we're talking about transfers, we did get an email this week, which I replied to, from one fan called Ron asking why Wrexham don't go for Marcus Rashford. It was a genuine email as well, so I don't want to just laugh at. I'm not laughing it off in that sense, but it ain't going to happen. And we've got Steven Fletcher anyway.
Marcus Rashford is on in the region of £325,000 a week. What do we reckon Wrexham's total wage bill comes to? I mean, not even a week of Rashford's wage, but I'm just trying to work out a third of that. Like 100,
Maybe
50,000.
I'd say like less than 100.
Less than 100 probably, and
Maybe
Rashford's
100,
on
yeah.
325. So
yeah,
unless I mean,
number
we don't
10
even play with
taken.
Yeah, well, he doesn't want it, does he? He doesn't fancy it. He doesn't fancy a League One. So Ron, I'm sorry, but it's that's not happening. I don't think nobody wants him, and I don't think Wrexham do. But Rich, the striking department then of those that are at the club, because you could talk about Billy Waters on an expiring contract. You could talk about Sam Dalby on an expiring contract. I'm led to believe that John Dadi Bodvarsson's contract, the one he signed when he joined on a short-term deal, is due to expire, I think, middle of this month, 14th or something like that. So for all intents and purposes, with the Port Vale game being postponed due to snow or whatever the exact reasoning was, he looks like he's played his last game for
Snow
the
on the
club.
lawn, wasn't it?
Snow on the lawn. Snow on the lawn. Yeah, that's very, very good from the Port Vale admin, and we know Ryan Grant is doing good things with Port Vale's media team. It was a little bit at Wrexham for a while. So Bodvarsson, yeah, he looks like his race is run. Rich Faal come into it a little bit off the bench more recently. He's looked a little bit brighter, but again, is struggling big time for minutes. Marriott, we're hoping's back very soon. Mullin's getting regular starts now, helped by the fact that Elliot Lee got sidelined with that hamstring injury. Ollie Palmer still getting stuck in, but he's looking less and less of a goal threat. You have to say, I thought particularly at Barnsley, I think with Palmer, he's done so much work in the first half of the season that he looks spent now. For want of a better phrase, it looks like he needs genuine competition that someone else can start these games, because he's taken a battering for months, and I start to think now that it's catching up with him a little bit. So as we've got it, Faal, Marriott, Mullin, Palmer, Fletcher. I don't know if I've missed anyone there, but we are, in my opinion, it's make or break this month that you need one, maybe two, maybe one on loan and one permanent. Michael Smith and Joe Gelhard, maybe.
It's one of those where I fully agree with you, because again, the club, I think, would have had loftier ambitions than us this season. But I want to reiterate that, look, we're back in League One. We were trying to temper those expectations, say, look, another promotion would be inconceivable, and don't get too greedy and don't get too disheartened if it doesn't happen. But given the situation we're in now, there might never be a better opportunity for Wrexham to get promoted from League One, because it's that momentum, that winning belief. If Wrexham have a season or two where they stay in League One, yes, they might be able to catch up off the pitch. They might be able to acclimatise to the new surroundings more. But you lose that momentum, and you lose that. We always mention it. It's that sort of unquantifiable togetherness and team spirit that we've garnered since Parky took charge and since the takeover. And you lose that, and the momentum halts. And it's so difficult to build momentum again. So from a Wrexham point of view now, we are genuinely, I think, have the best opportunity we might ever have in the next 5-6 years to get promoted from League One. So you've got to make the most of it. And we are really in a position where the open joke is, look, we're third in the table and we don't score goals. If we could go and get someone, a lethal striker, someone who is too good for this level, this window, pay a premium, break the budget, boil the piss of every fan in the world, just do it, because the reward there is Championship football. And it's tantalising. That's the carrot at the end of the stick. And it feels ridiculous to say that Wrexham could be in the Championship this year now. But it really is there. And I think you've got to just throw everything at this January window, because we are very close with a squad that still has clear room for improvement. And I think you've just got to throw loads of money at it now and almost just worry about the striker situation and that bloated squad at the end of the season.
Look, as I say, we're locked in a battle. You're going to see people like Joe Taylor, he was left out of the Luton squad the other night. Obviously, Luton have just sat their manager and Rob Taylor, so chaos there. We were also linked with Cauley Woodrow. not super excited about that. But again, am I in that camp of getting a little bit too fussy? I think Corey Woodruff's played in the Premier League, right, with Fulham back in the day. I think
Yes.
rings a bell. Not a goal threat, doesn't seem to be. Ryan Hardy, I watched recently. I was not enamored by him, but he is more of that big man. Ollie Palmer can do a lot of dirty work for you. I also saw a report this week about Millwall looking into a move for Louis Barry, which means, does that mean Tom Bradshaw becomes available, someone we've liked before? Heck, does Macaulay Langstaff become available, maybe even on a loan? I would still be all for that. I was in the summer that I thought Langstaff would be a good pickup. If he becomes surplus requirements at Millwall, I wouldn't read too much into that on a loan deal, because then they're not going to want to cut their losses on him yet. I even think the lad currently in Notts County, Alessandro Yatta, is it, that big man, pace, like the look of him. As I said, Nathan Lowe, I like the look of him. There are good players out there, form players out there, and Wrexham is one of the most attractive prospects in the EFL. It's if you're looking at Huddersfield, you're looking at Wrexham, you know that you can be the guy to get them over the line. And we're not talking about going and getting a Stansfield. Of course, he's brilliant. We're going to see him up close and personal when Birmingham play at the racecourse at the end of the month. But look at Alfie May. They knew what they were doing. They went and got the big fish in Jay Stansfield, the flashy name, the franchise player, the kind of, this is the jewel in our crown. But they also went and got someone like Alfie May, who they knew was just good enough to rip the level apart. And I think it was his brace the other week that got them victory. It wasn't Stansfield. I'm pretty sure they won 2-0 and Alfie May scored both goals. He's been key for them. And I think we need somebody like that, like an Alfie May that's £1 million, less than £1 million. Bolton, are they going to move on from Dion Charles? Somebody like that. Is there an Aaron Collins type out there? What are we looking to get? What I don't think Wrexham want to do is maybe go for a 35 plus, short, very, very short term option. But then you go, well, if they get you over the line, who cares? Because right now it is experience over inexperience that's getting us there in Fletcher. So I'm really, really intrigued, Rich. What we play Shrewsbury in 8 days' time when we're recording this, so a week on from when this is released. Will we have anybody through the door by then? We've got no game at all. I really hope that we make a move and we're not waiting until sort of deadline day to strike, because we've got that Birmingham game, we've got the Shrewsbury game, we've got Stevenage, and then it's going to be all systems go in the first sort of 2 weeks of February. So every window's massive, as you know, and you feel that all the time, but this window in particular feels enormous in terms of where the stakes are. We almost, dare I say, need to shove all the chips into the middle of the table and say we've given it everything we've got to get over the line. And if the cards fall as they fall and we lose it on the river for the poker term, then so be it. But we cannot end the season going, damn, what if we'd have actually rolled the dice in January?
I agree. And again, I think without being, I don't want to say the words too much, but say we missed out on automatics, even having that massive striker for the drama that follows that and the playoffs, that could be what makes the difference in those big games. So I'm sure they'll be looking at loads of different permutations. Again, it's important to stress that Wrexham do sometimes like to do business late on. I always look back to that summer where Parky said Okonkwo and George Evans both became available in like the last 3 or 4 days of the window, so you don't want to make your moves too quick. You mentioned there, look, what if Louis Barry went to Millwall? Someone who wasn't previously available becomes available. So Wrexham won't want to rush into it. And then look as well, considering we spoke about Steven Fletcher for so long, it was almost Luke Armstrong and said, wasn't it? And if Luke Armstrong had signed, Steven Fletcher might be retired now. So I don't think Wrexham are going to make a move too imminently. I still think it'll be sort of the final week if they're going to do it, but we should have a clearer picture by then as well. Because whatever happens, that Birmingham game will either show us how far off we are, I think, won't it? Once we play Birmingham at home. Because it wouldn't surprise me right now, and I would get crucified for this, but if Birmingham turn up, it's a really narrow game, but Alfie May and Stansfield are just too good, and we lose. Right. And that's kind of like, that's what we need. We'll be saying that's what we need, go get us that. So,
but Rich, if the owners are there, which you would anticipate that Birmingham is a huge part of the documentary this year, this season, no doubt Brady flies in. I'm going to guess that the whole red carpet half of Hollywood turn up for that one. And sometimes it's more striking when you see it with your own eyes. If it plays out as you just described, and Ryan and Rob look at that and go, right, we've got how long left of the window? A week or 8 days left of the window. That extra 150 grand we were dithering about, take it. We need it. Because we said, didn't we? We hypothesized that Ryan came over with his friends Channing Tatum and co, looked at that half-empty fourth wall, and then within a day or two after, the surcharge has been scrapped, and it's sold out pretty much every game ever since, right? So sometimes just seeing stuff with your own eyes is just a little bit different to when you're watching it on Paramount or Sky or wherever they tune in from. So let's see. I hope it doesn't play out as you say, and I hope it's another Steven Fletcher masterclass, or Sam Dalby comes back and scores a hat-trick of overhead kicks or something crazy. But yes, it might be the case that they turn up, they see the difference in one key area of the pitch and go, we need to make a move, and we can be with them going up to the Championship.
Yeah, I'd say that especially because goalkeeper I'm happy with. I know Burton's out now, but I was happy with first and reserve there. Defence, I'm happy with. Do you mean we've got a lot of depth there? Maybe being greedy, like a new proper centre-back, another real good one who can take us up for Championship level, but I'm happy for now. Midfield, I'm very happy. Got a lot of options, loads of great players. Matty James has been a revelation. Wing-backs, maybe I would like someone different, but Barney and McLean have got to start every game anyway, so who cares?
Well, Richard, on the midfield one, I mean, I'm led to believe that Dylan Levitt, who is at Hibernian currently, I'm led to believe that he is keen to get to Wrexham if a deal could be done. You're probably looking more at a loan deal, but I believe the family, or he's local, right? Like he's from
Flint, yeah.
Bodvarsson within Flint, and he's a midfielder that you probably saw more than I did when he was a youngster at Man United. He's obviously bounced around a bit. He's gone to Hibs, hasn't quite had a fair crack at it up there. Maybe if you're being sort of critical of Hibs a little bit, maybe they haven't given that fair go at it. You said about midfield you're happy with. Do you not feel that maybe we need somebody to pick the lock a little bit though and just create more chances for the strikers, or is our problem solely on the actual finishing rather than the production?
So Dylan Levitt is more of a deep line playmaker. He's very good on the ball, technically brilliant. Again, ironically, superb at Dundee United during a loan spell there. They then bought him at the end of the campaign from Man United. Gone to Hibs since, it's not worked out. Again, maybe a word of warning to Sam Dalby that just because you're doing well at Dundee United doesn't mean that you go on to bigger and better things. Really, really good player. I think lots of listeners will know him from his performances for Wales as well. Again, a player who's not played as much maybe for Wales as we would have liked to have seen. He's had some some good cameos, good experience. I think he played against Italy, didn't he? That European Championship that we had in 2021 that was revised. But I'm not sure he's the type of player we need right now in the midfield. I said, if we need a midfielder, I still think we need that number 10. Like I say, Dylan Levitt is more of a deep line, sort of centre defensive midfielder who creates from deep. I still think that with Elliot Lee's, we've seen Elliot Lee now with the injury drop out of the team. And even when Elliot Lee's been fit, there's still been huge question marks, haven't there, about he needs proper competition for places. And we saw the move for James McAtee that didn't come off last year. John McAtee, sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
And that didn't work out. But we still obviously wanted that player. And we got Josh Adam in, who looked okay when I watched him in that Port Vale game. I think it would have been the last time I'd watched him. But what gauge is that? And he's not been having a sniff when it comes to actual proper football and meaningful matches. So I still think a number 10's needed if required. However, I was hypothesizing to myself just now, how about this? And this probably sounds ridiculous. What if our number 10 is our number 10? What if Paul Mullin just drops into a midfield role more often and you have another two strikers? Say if you go out this month and you buy another top striker, or once Jack Marriott's back, what if it's those two and then Mullin behind at times when Lee's not available?
I saw an argument as well that said you can use Anthony Ford this month, right? Because registrations are open, it doesn't close, and you have to register your 22 again at the end of the month. Is there an argument to push Barney further forward? Because there was a lot of chatter and a lot of frustration, I think, at Barnsley that many of the goals Wrexham are conceding are coming down the right-hand side. So for all the praise we've had of Barney, who I think has been our player of the season so far, and Max, and we spoke so many, probably 100 plus of these podcast episodes where we talk about how great Max and Barney have been, the combination between them, the balls over the top, the patterns of play. But I definitely got a sense at Barnsley, Rich, that there was growing discontent about the amount of goals that come down that side. And I do wonder whether, I'm not necessarily suggesting I would do it, but whether you did push Barney further forward and tried to, I suppose you'd be taking away his width then, which is one of the key strengths, that he can stretch the play and get the crosses in. But again, he's very, very attack-minded, and would that allow you to put some D in? But Mullin, I hadn't thought of, so you'd definitely been hypothesizing to yourself, because I had no idea about that one. I think just go on.
Go on, you go yourself.
I was going to say on John McAtee, Wrexham went into the summer wanting John McAtee as competition for Elliot Lee and wanted Michael Smith as competition or to replace Ollie Palmer in the team. Parky got neither of those top targets and had to, allow Bolton to get John McAtee for almost £1 million. And Michael Smith stayed at Sheffield Wednesday and has done well there by all accounts. And I'm assuming that Michael Smith will still be a top target this month. He was the number one striker target in the summer. So let's see. I sound like a broken record because I am. It's such a key window, this, because we have such a good chance. We are phenomenal defensively, and the only thing that could derail our clean sheets was us talking about a clean sheet record. And ever since we've shut up about that, we managed to get one again. So we won't be bringing that up ever again until the season finishes, Rich, and we can look back on how many we ended up with. But we're great defensively. Arthur's back in there now. He looks, with a new fire that's been lit after his injury. We've got people like Dan Scarr who've got so much experience on the training ground day in, day out that can't even get a kick at the minute. Tom O'Connor's come back in and done well. So many pieces at defence. Lewis Brunt has gone out and we haven't missed a beat. We ended up getting that clean sheet against Peterborough. So many of the pieces fit. We just need that final one or two bits.
I see a podcast called RobRyanRed. It is an Nathan Salton Richford.
Nathan, Derby Day next up, Slops away. I think it was this week, wasn't it? There's a year since we beat them in the FA Cup. And again, we're going to have excessive FOMO this weekend, watching there's like 10 incredible FA Cup ties. And I know I'd probably rather be third in League One, but let me pity myself for a bit, because I bloody would have loved to be one of these lower league teams going to a Premier League big boy, because there's just so many. There's so many that I'm excited to watch this weekend if I can watch some of them. But Slops away Thursday night. For the podcast, it is worth noting we've got back-to-back Thursday night games now. So we're going to record on the Friday morning so we can actually react to the two matches. And we'll release that as early as we can, as soon as we can. But we have got jobs to do. And by we, I mean Nathan Salt has still got a job to do to pay his bills, as well as edit the podcast and do all that. So the podcast next 2 weeks will be out on a Friday rather than a Thursday, but that's because we'll look back on the matches and look ahead to the ones that are on the horizon as well. Slops, though, do you change anything? What type of game are you expecting?
I'm expecting a game. I mean, we absolutely did them at home, but I think they're a different entity. I know they're not world beaters suddenly, but under Gareth Ainsworth, they do have that bit more grit, and you have to respect the fact that they did beat Birmingham at the Meadow. So, we went there and we went there a year ago, and I think they probably felt hard done by because they dominated a lot of the ball and really pressed us and really penned us in. And then we come up with that big goal through Tom O'Connor and we get through. And I think they were irked by the fact that, we were supposedly semi-pro footballers and, we weren't that great and they should have beaten us. Whereas now it's, they go in as huge underdogs at home to us. We've not been great away, but, that is a game where we should need no sort of added motivation. I would go there with McLean back in. I know McLean was kind of given a rare start off. He started on the bench against Peterborough. He's played a lot of football, but remember, we're going to have a long spell. Everyone should be as kind of healthy and as refreshed as possible. We've got one of the longest breaks of anybody. You would think that we've got such a long break now, having not played Port Vale and not playing at the weekend. I would go McLean. I would go Barney. I would, if he's fit, I'd go Lewis Brunt back in there. Owen O'Connell, I know had a really nightmare day at Barnsley, but one swallow doesn't make a summer or whatever. One mistake doesn't define him. You're going to go with Max again. You're going to go with Okonkwo. You'd go with Matty James. You're going to go with Rathbone, and I would get Elliot Lee back in there. And I'm going to say I would start Mullin plus new striker. I'm just going to try and will it into existence. That's what I would do. Manifest.
I was going to say as well, we'll maybe touch on this next week's podcast, but in terms of conceding goals down the right-hand side, I would say that prior to Peterborough, I thought Max had been off it for a couple of games. I thought his performance level dropped. But I also think a key issue is they've not got the same defensive covering on that side from midfield. But we can get into that next week, because I know we've already spoken a lot about attacks this week. Interestingly, on Shrewsbury, Trollops, 2 wins in their last 15, but they've only lost 1 of their last 6. Obviously, they beat Lincoln at home as well, which was 1-0. They've drawn 2-2 with Wigan, drawn with Northampton, Blackpool, lost to Leyton Orient last time out. In terms of their fixtures, they actually play as well this weekend. They've got Huddersfield Town at home, so that might be a truer gauge. That might be a game which tells us more about how well they've sort of recovered, or if they have at all.
So we need them to do us a favour and then roll over and get the tummy tickled when we play them.
Basically, cool. Yeah. Like as I say, they beat Birmingham 3-2 at home, but then I think 2 weeks later they lost 4-1 at home to Wickham as well.
Yeah,
and then Huddersfield. This will be the one that sort of tells us about that. I don't know what to expect. I think it's going to be a dreadful match of football. I think they will really play into that though, because I think it's similar to maybe Tranmere last season, although Tranmere weren't at threat of relegation at the point, where that's such an easy game for them to get motivated for. And I know it's a derby for us, but we've got a lot more to lose in expectation. Whereas last year we were the underdogs.
This is why we need 11 Ollie Rathbones in games like that, who's just going to run.
We do. I just think it's going to be a dirty, gritty, close game. And mate, I don't want to be that guy. I would not surprise me if we draw with them next week.
We'll beat them, but we'll beat them. I'm going to manifest the new striker comes up and Steven does all the dirty work, and Steven Fletcher gets the winner once again. Rich, before we finish though, and you've said about the pod changing dates next week already, I wanted to read you this by Craig Jones. He put it on Twitter that after 25 games last season, now we've played 25 games this season, we've won 15 of them. That's right, yeah, we won 15 of them. We've lost 4, drawn 6. We're third, level on points with Wickham. After 25 games last season in League 2, we were also third, level on points with second, as we are this season. We were also 2 points behind the league leaders, who went on to become champions. We were also 4 points ahead of fourth place, and we'd also lost just 4 games from the opening 25. And when it all was said and done, we finished second. So if you want omens...
Confirmed. You've heard it here for promotion confirmed. Once again, apologies to Steven Fletcher. Please never leave. Thank you very much for joining us wherever you are in the world. As we always say, RobRyanRed@gmail.com, RobRyanRed.com. Watch on YouTube as well. We want to know on YouTube, what should we do about Sam Dalby this month? And who, if you've got one, is your dream January transfer signing? Thank you very much to Red 10 People Development for their continued support of the podcast. And thank you very much to Wrexham-based band Hypnotic for the music, the stings. And as always, thank you to you, wherever you are in the world, for continuing to listen to our spiel for what has probably been over another hour again this week. We'll be back next Friday after the Shrewsbury game, looking ahead to the Birmingham match as well. Thank you. Take care. We'll see you again next time.
The Wrexham AFC podcast with Nathan Salt and Rich Faal.